Hey, I'm Josh. I'm from Heirs, and I'm at my studio here in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm going to take you through the production that I did on Dead Ringer from our album Life is Violence. We went out to Ocean Sound Studios in Giske, Norway. And it's an isolated studio. I mean, you literally can walk out from the control room right to the ocean's edge. It's a beautiful place, and we wanted to go out there and live track this record. None of this is edited. You can look at these drums and, you know, he's pushing, he's on, he's pushing. You know, I didn't want to quantize him, but I built the grid around him in Pro Tools. And so you can kind of see where we get a little bit faster and then, you know, it slows back down and it gets into the last part. We had this ebb and flow between us as musicians in the studio, and I wanted to maintain that. There's no editing on the drums as far as quantization, like I was saying, but also there's no drum samples. We wanted this to be a very human record. Let me show you the drums right now as we have them. So this is the kick drum. You can hear all the bleed, you can hear the toms in it. Here's the snare drum. Also on the toms, you can see I have 3 tracks here. It's actually 6. I did a top and a bottom on the toms, and then I summed them down once I got the balance after I'd gone through the tracks. But I also hand mute and then tail them off when it goes to a section that they're not playing, instead of trying to let a software gate or a hardware gate do that. I just left them wide open. So this is what the toms sound like. And here's a part where we get to all 3 of them. So the kick, snare, and the toms together. Sound just good. Really good drummer, Ben Turkovic. Crushed the drums. He hits very consistently, plays really well. He listened to the demos that I had written and really adhered to what I had wrote for the song, and added a little spin here and there and really beefed it up. The next thing I do typically is like I'll have a hi-hat mic, but I separate them. So as you can see here, I have a closed hi-hat and open hi-hat section in the verse. You'll see it go to the open here. Let's turn that up. So that way you can hear I have complete dynamic control between the closed and the open sections. Little trick to use. Also, same thing for the rides, where he's crashing versus where he's actually, you know, the ping of the ride. And then he's crashing here. I can balance those two. I can push it in the mix without having to automate one track. I can just pull a fader up. The cymbals were interesting because I did a standard stereo overhead, but I did close mics on all of the cymbals. So left crash, right crash, and then the far right crash all got WA84s from Warm Audio. And we had Warm Audio U67s getting the overheads. So you can see all these cuts. I actually cut out the cymbals and faded them on the individual spot mics, but I left the overheads wide open just to keep the stereo image there. And I'm kind of treating those like a room mic for the cymbals, if that makes any sense. So this is what they sound like. And without the overheads. So that way you can really pick out where those cymbals are as he's hitting them. It's time consuming, but I think it ended up being a great result. The The room at Ocean sounds amazing. Not only the vibe of just tracking in there and being there and looking at the ocean, but also it just sounds good. I had a close room mic that had some compression. I had a far room mic that I left kind of dry. And then we had a mono room mic that had a little bit of compression. And then we also set the snare drum to an actual EMT plate that was up in the ceiling above the control room. And this is what the rooms sound like. I'll go back into that first verse where the toms are. Let's listen to just that plate. So all of it together with the rooms and all the individual mics. And here's verse 2. Let's get some of those hi-hats. So that's what our drums sounded like. No samples, getting a lot of the character of the kit out of the rooms. Another thing we did that I thought was really interesting is we had all these drums laying around, so I had the guys overdub some pretty big tom parts onto the album. So here's this. That's for the guys playing drums. And then here's some overdubs of different rhythms over it. So let's listen to that with the drums. Just makes for an interesting verse. It just kind of brings it to life. Here's with everything in. So ends up being cool. Other thing we did, there's just a couple bits of percussion. There's a bowed china. And then sleigh bells. I don't know what those are. I think those are castanets, but we're just shaking them or something. And then Ben was playing with them in the stereo microphones. So that's just kind of in this midway point of the verse. Let me take you on to bass. Brad, who came down and played bass, was an amazing player, wrote a lot of really cool parts based off the demos I'd originally done, kind of spiced everything up. Everything was done live, so what I did is as he switched like pedals, I would move those to different tracks and commit it. So like the cleaner bass tone here versus the main bass tone here. And as you can see, there's really just the two spots. You have mainly the verses where it is, and then in the back end of the second verse, it just picks up and it stays distorted the rest. Rhythm guitars are pretty simple. It was live tracking, so we created different tracks to move the different tones to. And there's only 3 major tones in this. There's the kind of crunch, lighter gain that we profiled, and then the mid gain, and then the high gain drop at the end. We used quad cortexes from Neural DSP. We profiled all the tones here and just took them to Norway. And that way we could isolate the drum room and track all in the same room, but also it's just, the tones are amazing, and they're all just, specific to us. So we didn't use any presets. It was all my new vintage amps and cabs and things that I have here. So, but here's the main tone in the verse. It's a Trainer YGL3. Just has a little spring reverb on it. And then the main tone is this. And then at the end, of course, there is that big section. And all together with the drums and the bass, it sounds like this. That's pretty much what we were hearing in our headphones the whole time we were tracking. Then we got into the riffs. We got into some of the fun stuff, and that happened. There were a couple riffs. There were a lot that came from the demos, but then there were a couple that we kind of made up on the spot. This was an original, the whole song based around this original riff. We brought it back in verse 2, just a little bit different, and he changes like with the chord structure. So, because it was just so cool, and it only lived up at the beginning. And then there's this riff. And all of these just really neat little layers that we added in. And that's just the hook that goes through the whole chorus. And then this is the verse 2. And then there's these in the second verse. Just playing around with some EBO stuff. So just, you know, building some tension, back to the chorus. Then we get into the solo section. So there's the first one that Chris played. And then my solo. Shout out to Brandon, who co-produced this with me, pushed me to write something different there. And then we just have this other riff. Just speed picking some stuff. Then we added like some of these crazy out-of-tune bends to go along with the end hits. Just to kind of add some high-end energy to it. They're really low, but I think it helps that section. Then there are the horns. So this is in the ending when we do the big ring outs into the drop part. Which is really cool. But I'm not sure if anybody realized all this was going on under those. Now with the big horns in. So we have this very Lord of the Ringsy orchestral part happening. As far as keyboards go, this one did get a lot more of a treatment. One of my favorite sounds on this record is actually this drone. Interestingly enough, this drone is the whole song stretched out, I don't even know how long, reversed, put through this crazy reverb, put back. So the beginning of the song is the end and the end of the song is the beginning, but it's like in this weird way. So if you listen to it, that is the ring out part at the end. You can kind of hear it, and then I stretched it back into time after it had been all this stuff. So just a wild effect I had done early on when I did the writing for it, and I wanted to keep that element in there. Everything else is pretty much from the demo. We just supplemented some of the sounds and made them bigger. So like in the chorus, you have like a Juno pad. And there's a Moog sub bass that goes through a majority of the song, just kind of laying some extra subby stuff down. Verses are really cool because you have kind of an ARP. There's like a stutter in there, all sorts of weird things. This is the beginning of the verse, second verse. And then you get this ARP that comes in. And that's the lead, of course. So we have a bunch of stuff. A lot of that is ASM Hydrosynth. Some of the elements are from Serum. Some of them are from Omnisphere. Some of them are from Arturia. I've got stuff all over the place. I couldn't even begin to tell you exactly what everything is. There's this little loop at the end, something I took out of a clean guitar, just to add some stuff in there. And then there's Sean's vocals. You know, a majority of these were tracked at Ocean Sound. We did all the overdubbing and layering, any harmonies or extra stuff. We even had Chris, who plays guitar live with us, add some stuff. And this is what everything sounds like together. So that's Dead Ringer. Really love the feel of this song and how we kept the human element to it, but also augmented it with all these synthetic keys and different orchestral elements. Really appreciate your guys' questions on all this. Glad you're enjoying the record. If you don't have it, relapse.com, Life is Violence. I've been Josh, I'm from Idle Heirs, and thank you so much.